This is Creative Banter. Ben has returned from his most recent trip to Death Valley, where he experienced a slight existential crisis while photographing glistening mud. This leads to a conversation around anxiety and film photography, as well as the veil of perfection with digital cameras. Once again, I am attempting to replace my large format film kit with digital, this time with the Fuji GFX50s. Will it actually work? I, along with many others, have my doubts. But perhaps there's something different about this one. Let's dive right into it, shall we? Oh boy. Oh, turn on Do Not Disturb so I don't get disturbed by my hundreds and thousands of friends and texts that I get every day.
So many followers.
Oh, it's ridiculous. Yeah. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's nonstop.
I actually just got a new, I don't know if this was a good idea or a bad idea, but about 15 minutes before we sat down to record, I started transferring over to my new phone because I had an iPhone X or 10 or whatever it was supposed to be. And I've had that forever. I think that was like pre-pandemic. And so I finally got to the point where it's like, all right, it's time for a new one. So I got one of the new 15s and everything transferred over pretty easily, but I don't know if it'd just start like making annoying sounds in the background and beeping at me, and I don't know. But it's been a smooth transition, which is good.
Yeah, that's I think my mom has the 15 or the 15 Pro, I think is what I had her get, because she came. So years ago, I had everyone in the family like switch over to Samsung, and as I did, and it was that like teenage know-it-all kind of deal of, oh, Samsung's better. And it was during the whole thing of all the controversy around Apple using software updates and that kind of stuff to purposely brick your phone prior to like there were new phones being released and that kind of thing, slowing them down. Mm-hmm. So needless to say, for maybe 8 years or so, my family's been on Samsung. And then when I got the MacBook, I ended up with the iPhone and all the whole ecosystem now. But since she needed a phone, I think she needed one when the 14s came out. But I'm like, just wait a year because the 15's having USB-C. Yeah. And so that way she didn't have to get any new chargers or anything. And I'm on the 13 Pro right now. Girlfriend is on the 14 Pro. So we'll eventually upgrade, but it's still that annoying thing of everything. Like I had to get new cables because of switching over, and now it's going to be going back to USB-C once I upgrade again. But
yeah, and I wait a long time between phones. Obviously, going from the 10 to the 15's a pretty big jump, but it's usually during the winter trips that I really start to notice the decline in the battery, just because it's a little chillier out. No, it was not cold in Death Valley where I just was, but certainly when I'm out in the field and I have the cell service turned off, I have the Wi-Fi turned off, and I still have to charge at midday because it runs out by 10 in the morning or something like that. I'm like, I need to get something new, especially since I'm using it with the satellite messenger, and it's a little bit of a lifeline. Yeah. It's kind of an important thing to have. So it's good to have something current and up to date and everything that's included with that.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when, like you said, when you're using it for a lifeline, that's, you kind of want that to actually work properly, not fail on you. So,
yeah.
But yeah.
So I saw that you have a new camera now.
What else is new in the world of Cody?
Yes. This one I think will have lasting power. I think something about the medium format digital, it seems to have more lasting power.
Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know already, Andrew Baruffi posted a story on his Instagram page. What was that? Just last week at some point, a week and a half ago, something like that. And he said that he was selling his Fuji GFX50s. And of course, he also is selling his GF 250mm lens, which is a little bit out of my budget, but also not really something that I'm interested in having right now. But nonetheless, he posted that, and I just couldn't say no.
Yeah.
It was one of those things of the price was right, and I've always been interested in the GFX system, trying out digital medium format. More so, I was interested in the GFX50R, the rangefinder style, but But there are benefits to the 50S. Mainly, if I want to in the future, I can take the viewfinder itself off and have a tilting viewfinder that can move, I think, 180 degrees or something up and down, and you can change the orientation of it a bit, which helps when doing compositions where the camera is fully face down to the ground, because the articulating screen doesn't truly tilt as much as like the screen does on the Sony A7R5 or whatever it is. So picked that up, and I know everybody's thinking, oh great, how long is this one going to last? And I posted something on my story too. I'm like, so we're taking bets now. How long do we think? And I got some people that were like, oh, maybe like 3 months. And they're like, yeah, it's just being nice. Maybe like 60 days or like a month or 3 weeks or something like that. I'm like, there definitely is something different. That I can feel that there's more lasting power to this than with the Sony or whatever, or the Nikon previous to that. More so because ever since I said yes to Andrew about buying it from him, I've been super excited about it.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing.
And I didn't have that with the Sony. Like the Sony was just a chance purchase kind of deal. It was just it felt right at the moment, but after actually having it and playing around with it a little bit, like I said before, I just didn't have that excitement to actually use it and to go out with it. I didn't want to take it out into the field and take photographs with it as much as I did with the 4x5. Whereas with this, I actually want to go out with it. I want to play around with it. I want to use it like the camera that it is. So I think that's the biggest difference. So
yeah, and I think with medium format, and again, I don't own a medium format digital. I haven't really worked with it other than playing with it. But to me, just from that outside perspective, it feels like if you have a camera like that in your hands, you feel like it's something special. Like it's not just something ordinary. And I think that is one of the things that gives that little spark of excitement of wanting to get out and to work with it, and you feel like you're doing something with it. And I can relate that a little bit to the process of working with a large format, where again, there's that feeling that you're doing something important, that you're doing something special. And I think that's what gives it the lasting power.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's one of the reasons why you will probably hold on to this one for quite a while.
Yeah, of course, that's the plan. And I mean, but that's also been the plan for the rest of them. But like I said, there definitely is absolutely a difference here between this and most recently the Sony. I think part of that comes down to lens selection too. Like a lot of landscape photographers will look at the lens lineup for the GFX system and say, oh, well, they don't have X lens or Y lens. They don't have the range that I'm looking for. It's not wide enough. It's not telephoto enough. But I think that limitation, at least for me, is really reminiscent of 4x5. I mean,
yeah, because you have really just the one lens you've used for the longest time.
Yeah, I've used a single lens for the past 5 years now on 4x5. So, of course, I can't get that same. It's not like I can get a lens that's going to give me all of the same qualities as the 210 on the 4x5 is, because I can't get as close. Like right now, I have the Midicon 65mm 1.4, which is about a 50mm equivalent. If that lens had like macro capabilities, I'd be much closer to the single lens setup that I would love to have.
Yeah.
But since it doesn't, it's a matter of I'm going to have more lenses, but I'm still limited in the sense that there aren't 400 different lenses like there are for most mirrorless and DSLR systems out there. Like you're limited by what you can choose or what you can have. If you want a zoom lens or a telephoto zoom lens, you have the 100 to 200 5.6 and that's it. So unless you're adapting other lenses, but still. So I think that's ultimately what I'm going to end up with, and just play around with that versatility and kind of have a kit not too dissimilar to what Andrew has used for most of his photographs, and just see what happens. I mean, I just kind of playing it by ear, but
Nice. Yeah, I look forward to what you come up with that, and any observations you have as you start working with that a little bit more, and comparisons to the process of working with a large format camera and everything. But it, to me, that feels like a better match for your style and for your approach to photography.
Yeah.
And I was actually thinking about that a little bit when I was in Death Valley. And I will say that when so we're recording this on a Thursday. I got back this past Sunday. So I've been back long enough to drop off my film and pick it up from the lab, and I'll say that I'm very happy with what I have from the trip. Lots of really good opportunities when I was out there, but I did not have the first day funk. I had kind of like this weird lingering thing on the second and third day, and because I was thinking a little bit about how you had got that medium format camera, and I was attempting to take a photo that was kind of difficult with large format. It didn't end up being all that great of a photo, but I did take one I really liked a little later in that day. But it was some glistening mud in midday light, which I know I'm painting a picture here. Just people are like, oh yeah, glistening mud, midday light. This is great. And it ended up being a little bit of an exercise in frustration because it's really hard to meter. Not that the technique in metering doesn't work, but when I'm trying to meter off the highlights of the glistening mud in midday light, you can't read any of the numbers through the light meter.
Yeah.
Like it just blows out everything. And so I ended up just kind of blindly pointing at it and then just doing the mental math and, figuring out how to do things. But when I was in the process of doing that, I was a little bit frustrated, but I was also thinking like, why do I do this to myself? Why don't I just use a camera, like a normal camera, like a normal person? And so I had a little bit of that going on, but then once things started rolling in, like I said, there was a photo I took later that evening, in which I'm really, really happy with. And it's the sort of photo that's absolutely perfect for large format in terms of it's a smaller scene, a little bit of front tilt gets everything in focus. Took a picture at just that perfect moment when the sun is partially obstructed by the mountains in the distance as it's setting, and you get this really nice light. So that worked out pretty well. But I had another thought as well, and it was around that, like the second or third day. I was questioning a little bit of my purpose of being out there. I mean, this is after taking a photo I was already quite happy with, but I was thinking to myself that, going on these trips, going out to Death Valley, and this is the 14th year now that I've gone to Death Valley, going to Zion. I was just thinking, this is all that this will ever be. In the standpoint that I have no ambition to start some sort of gallery. I have no ambition to lead workshops. I have no ambition to do any of those things that would seem like it would take it to another level. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love what I do. I love going there and just wandering around and taking pictures, but it's also kind of a little bit weird from the standpoint that this is all that this will ever be. There's no way to really upgrade from this. And again, I'm happy with where I am, but I think there's so many things in life where, you go to school with a prospect of getting a job, and then you get that job, and then you have the prospect of working your way up higher and higher to the point where, you have I don't know if people want to get into some sort of management position or whatever, or become the boss and all that sort of stuff. And then at the end of that, there's a handsome retirement. But for me, I'm just like looking at this flat level thing of like, it is what it is. I'm good with it, but it was kind of a weird feeling.
Yeah.
So it was an odd thing, but then I went for a bike ride and everything was happy. So there's that.
So you just had a little kind of existential crisis in the middle of Death Valley.
Yeah. And it's weird because on paper, it's exactly what I want to do. But when you also look at it and things just are kind of going sideways, you feel like there should be some level of ambition to make it greater than that. Mm-hmm. So it was a really kind of a strange, conflicting kind of thing. And I also think that that's why I've really been enjoying the cycling lately, because, you know, I'm very new to it. I've been doing this for like 6 months, and I see what some people are able to do. And there's like this hill to climb in terms of getting better and all this sort of stuff, and knowing that all that stuff will happen, which is kind of exciting. And maybe it's like there's not as much excitement in the from the photography standpoint. But again, I'm perfectly happy with it. It's just kind of weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back for a minute to your Glistening Mud and the highlight, yes. Like, I thought it was funny when I posted on Instagram stories about picking up Andrew's GFX and shared that his story that he had posted about it being sold to me and all that. I got obviously a bunch of messages from different photographers on there that were like, of course, like, how long is this one going to last? And just talking about like why I decided to go for it, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
And then I got into a conversation about how some people thought that it was a much better option than the Sony, much more fitting, that it would be all of that kind of ordeal, like talking medium format cameras a bit.
Yeah.
One person that I got into a conversation with, we started talking about you and why, in particular, you decide to spend countless amounts of time and energy and money, and especially with large format, especially with 8x10 and slide film, versus getting into like the GFX system or something like that.
Yeah.
And I know that you've said that it's almost inevitable that you will pick one up at some point in the future and at least try.
Be forced into it at some point. Yeah.
But I don't know. I just, like, for me, picking it up is, and I keep trying to go to digital because I have, like, my mental health is already like on a teeter-totter every day. And like, the last thing that I need is to be introducing more anxiety into my life than what is necessary.
Which film certainly does do.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, of course, I've been doing it for long enough that I know at least generally what I'm doing most of the time, or I can pretend to. But there's still that anxiety of, like, you go out, and especially when you're going to new places, and then you're just wondering the whole time, is this film going to turn out? Did I expose this right? Am I going to screw something up in the developer? And all of these questions keep going through your head, and then trying to figure out scanning and if it's going to scan properly. And you have all of these like what ifs, along with the simple fact that film is not exactly the cheapest option out there.
Yeah.
And that's why like I said, that's why I keep going back to digital, or trying to keep going back to digital. And now that I have this GFX, I think that it's going to be it, that this is truly the camera system that will get me the results that I want without that anxiety around it. And as much as I love the 4x5 process, I'm just using this camera has been, the few times that I've used it so far, has been great. Like every part of it. And I'd be really curious to see you try it out and see how your thoughts, or what your thoughts are on it. And if it's something that you would pick up, not because you're necessarily forced to, but because you actually want to.
Yeah. And I think the way that would go would be, I would be excited to use it in the field, but then upon seeing the images, I would end up, there's this veil of perfection in a way when you're out in the field with something that's, fancy and new and all that, and you're excited about it. But then once you get to the pictures and you kind of have the reality of like, oh, there's some color fringing, there's this, there's that, and all of a sudden things seem a little less perfect. I think that part would bug me a little bit. But it would be nice to have that feeling of knowing that, this is something that is, a higher grade than I had, among the best of the digital captures that's out there. So I think that part would be beneficial. And who knows, maybe at some point I'll pick up one of those systems and just use it for those times when 8x10 just is not the right tool for the job.
Right.
Which is what I told myself I'd do with the Sony, but I didn't end up actually doing that. Because I would just end up carrying around the 8x10 regardless. And, it's kind of like you could use like a wrench as a hammer if you want to, it'll work.
Yeah.
It's not the best, but it'll do the job. But yeah, I do think I'll be forced into it at some point. And I don't know. We'll see. We'll see on that. But one of the things that was kind of fun about the trip to Death Valley, so it was the third day that I decided to go for a bike ride. And then a couple of days later, I went for a second bike ride. So I wanted to go from Furnace Creek, which is the main area where there's the campgrounds and stuff. And that is right at sea level, and a little bit less than sea level, kind of depending on where you are at Furnace Creek, down to Badwater, which is where they have this big lake that's about a foot deep now. And Oliver is barking in the background.
That's okay. So I have Emmy right by the closet door trying to bust it down.
Yes. But I wanted to do that ride from Furnace Creek down to Badwater and back. And so it's about 33 miles round trip. So it's not too bad. But one of the things that's really fun about it is it's just continuous road. There's no intersections. There's no stoplights. It's just, you could just keep going straight. And even though you're starting kind of near sea level, you end up right around 300 feet below sea level. It's like 280 something feet below sea level. There's about a 1,500 foot elevation gain overall because you're going up and down these hills, and every time you go up those hills, it counts that as elevation gain. But it was a really fun ride. But there's something that there's two experiences I had on this trip. There is one that gives me faith in mankind, and then there's one that is the opposite of that. So the faith in mankind experience is, as I made my way to Badwater, I rode all the way there and got off my bike, and I'm just kind of walking along the boardwalk. And then I have this picture of me that I asked if there's some tourists there, and asked if they could take a picture of me with my bike right where the flooded salt flats are, and got a picture. But then as soon as that was done, I kind of put my phone away. And then there's this gentleman who came up to me, and he had a British accent, and he says, "Are you Ben Horn?" And meanwhile, I'm thinking like, I'm in spandex. Like, how am I being recognized?
It's because you're in spandex. That's all that people know about you now.
Yes. And so he was a photographer from the UK. His name is Mark Broomfield. And not only did he recognize me, he had purchased my 2023 print portfolio, came all the way from the UK. And sure enough, there I am at Badwater. It's got to be very strange from his perspective of, oh, maybe I found out about Death Valley by watching the videos or whatever. And you go there, and then there's the person there with the bike. It's just absolutely bizarre experience. But he's a really, really nice guy. So he's on this. I guess this is kind of the informal artist recommendation, because I know that you'll have one a little bit later on. But on Instagram, he's Mark Broomfield Photo. Really, really fantastic work. But it was just one of those kind of once in a million experiences of, I mean, I'm feeling like I'm incognito here, wearing the spandex, got the bike, and sure enough, people saw right through my disguise.
Yeah, you got to work on that.
Yeah. But that was fun. And then sort of the opposite sort of experience. So I got there on a Monday, and in Death Valley, there's a variety of campgrounds. So the one I like to go to is called Texas Springs. It's kind of in this little, I don't know, I wouldn't call it a valley, but it's kind of surrounded by hills. and it's terraced. So each site is a little bit higher than the next one. And there's campfire rings, there's picnic tables. It's about as nice of a campground as you can get for, being in Death Valley. I grabbed a campsite there, and so that was on Monday. And I stayed there until Sunday. I left really early Sunday morning. And there's a profound difference between the weekday crowd and the weekend crowd. Very, very big difference. And it was also a holiday weekend. So it was a 3-day weekend for a lot of people because of President's Day. And so it was an extra strong weekend crowd. So Friday night after it wasn't Friday night. It was late afternoon on Friday, kind of early evening. I had gone out in the mud flats and scattered some photos and picked up some trash. And I'm like, all right, let's go back to camp. I go back to my campsite, and there's a huge tent on my campsite. It was a big enough tent to park a car in. And generally, the bigger the tent you see, the less comfortable the people are with being outdoors.
Yeah.
If you see a campsite and there's a bunch of like little 1-man tents or 2-man tents or, a backpacking style stuff, those are cool people. Those are the sort of people you want to hang with. But you see the really, really big tent. It's
they brought their entire home.
Red flags.
They brought their entire home with them.
They did.
Yes. Yeah.
They did. Now, the way it works at this campground is there is an automated kiosk, and that's where you go and you pay for the campsite. You just put in how many days you want, and it spits out a little receipt. And then you clip that receipt to the post on the campsite. And then the camp host will go around and they'll pull your receipt, make sure everything's good. Then they fold it in half, and with a really big Sharpie, they put the number of the day that you're checking out. So in my case, it was 18. And so when you're driving around to try to find a campsite, you just look at all those posts and you see what day people are checking out, and you can kind of figure out, how long people are going to be there for and stuff. So now it's Friday and the campground is full. And when I get back there, I see that big tent there. There was a group of 4 people, and they were making dinner, big black lifted pickup truck, and their tag was put over the top of my tag. And so I kind of went up to them and I said, hey, sorry to bother you guys, but you guys are in my campsite.
Hold on. I love that. You're going up to them when they're in your campsite and you're saying, hey guys, sorry to bother you here, but like, yeah, that's and pretty much how I pictured that starting off, at least with you. Yeah.
Now there's another aspect to this, and I mention this only because there's a little bit of a perceived power dynamic. It was a group of 4 women, probably in their 30s. And so, I kind of approach them because I don't want to be like the angry white guy. Showing up like, oh, I have power. This, it's like I'm trying to like be very, very nice about it. And they told me that they paid the ranger for the site. I'm like, you paid a policeman for the campsite? This is not how it works here. And so I go over to the signpost and I pulled my tag. I'm like, this is my tag that your tag is on top of. And there was just kind of a bit of a go around. And eventually there was one of the women sort of took the lead and was just stonewalling me, basically saying, it is what it is. So there was like no, oh, I'm sorry, we didn't know how it worked here, or oh, I'm sorry, we thought that no one was here, or whatever. Hey, we'll move down to the other campground in the morning. Or there was no sort of apology. There was no sort of trying to find some sort of a compromise. It was just, this is our site, go away. And so at a certain point, I realized this is going nowhere. This is a weekend crowd bunch, and there's no winning for me in this situation. Because, I didn't, by then it was getting dark. I'm like, I'm not going to expect them to like take down their tent in the dark and go, but I'm like, at least just like move your campsite in the morning, do something. But at a certain point, I'm just like, this isn't going anywhere. there's no winning for me in this situation. So at some point I just said, all right, well, have a good life. And I just took my tag and I moved down to the less attractive campground. And the neighbors next to me were heavy smokers.
Nice.
So I was just breathing in smoke for much of the evening. And then the next day I found another site, because by then, like, the campgrounds, pretty much all of them were completely stuffed.
Yeah.
And I found another site the following night, and I was talking to the campground host down there and talking about how my, I'm moved down here and I had the tag from the other campground, and how I was just a little bit of a refugee from the from Texas Springs after, But and she said, well, did you leave anything behind? Because sometimes people will leave a chair or something like that, just as to reinforce that the campsite is being occupied. And I told her that, in years past I had left a chair, but someone stole the chair and then someone stole the campsite. So there's no winning with the weekend crowd.
Yeah.
But despite all that, I got my film back, and I will say that I am quite happy with the images. I have a wide variety, some that show actual sky, which is unusual. I used many a grad filter for photos throughout the trip, and the conditions were excellent. There was no wind. And so I really do look forward to how that will all work out. I haven't scanned any pictures yet, but I have played with some of the videos a little bit. And I'm also going to be doing a little bit of a different approach, where some of the voiceover stuff, which is normally scripts that are right after the fact, I'm going to just read what I actually wrote in the journal entry.
Okay.
And so, like, usually I do the intro, I write a script and put it to a song and all that. In this case, I'm just going to read the first journal entry as sort of the opening monologue and make it all kind of work. So it's going to be a little bit of a different style.
No, I like that idea.
But I think it should be interesting.
Yeah.
And so I think it'll be a different sort of experience. But I will say that now that I saw the photos and I'm happy with what I have, I do want to make a return trip to Death Valley. I'll probably leave the camera behind, just take the bike, just take the kayak, and just because it was so fun biking there. It was just a really awesome experience. So even with the weekend crowd bunch, it was a good trip. So that was nice.
Yeah, I mean, that's still, talk about one hell of a way to sour the last 2 nights or so of your trip.
And I was in the back of my mind, I'm just hoping that maybe there was a karma chipmunk that will chew their engine wires. Like, karma is a wonderful thing. Here I am picking up trash, doing that, find my campsite taken away. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Things happen.
Yeah.
For a reason.
Yeah. I mean, last weekend I just played around with the Fuji a bit, because everything came in on time for me to do so. Girlfriend had 4-day weekend because of the holiday. Being a teacher has its perks. So
yeah, for sure.
So we went out on a hike on the 16th, played around with it a little bit, and then ended up getting a ton of snow, another 4 or 5 inches, something like that.
Oh wow.
And so just tried making the most out of it at home, and ended up getting a couple photographs of the bamboo that's across the road from me that I had photographed on film and made a print of that looks pretty good. And I haven't touched the files from the Fuji yet or anything. I'm gonna still wait a little bit yet on those, but yeah.
So definitely you're very much treating it with that film style of giving it some time.
Yeah. At least for now, mainly because I am finally starting to switch over everything from my one hard drive to this new one that I had gotten a couple months ago, having that dual backup.
Okay, well, that's good.
Finally.
That's very important. Yes. You've seen what's happened to me.
Yeah, exactly. And then with that, I'm re-editing some photographs, and then also there's about a year's worth of photographs from the Rico and from film that I just haven't really done anything with. So that's preventing me from touching the Fuji files for now, at least, So,
yeah.
But then tomorrow we get the day away from, my girlfriend took off of work, and we get the day without Emmy. So that'll be interesting. She is going to get spayed. So. Yeah, so
she'll get the cone of shame.
Yep, we are dropping her off between 8 and 8:30 in the morning, and then we're going to go a little bit longer of a drive than we would with Emmy right now, at least, and go for a hike. And we'll probably pick Emmy up. The vet estimates around like between 4 and 6, depending on how she reacts to the anesthesia and how she starts to wake back up and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
And now she's freaking out because she hears the garage door opening from my mom getting home.
Yeah. So will that be the first time in all this time that, she hasn't been around the house?
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like,
it'll probably be weirdly quiet.
Yeah, especially because Lucy doesn't do like anything. She just lazes around. So it's just going to be a matter of how long we are out hiking. And once we get back from that, like, depending on how much time we have until we have to go pick her up and get the phone call, it's, what do we do with ourselves without a dog again? Because the past 4 months, five months, whatever it's been now, has been nothing but puppy focused. So
yeah. I mean, it's just like there was a time when my wife and I had dropped off Oliver at her aunt and uncle's house because we're leaving on a trip the next day or whatever. But it was just so weird and quiet in the house when he wasn't there. So it's, they come into our lives as a just ball of energy and so much noise and stuff, and then we just kind of get used to that.
Yeah.
And so it'll probably be oddly quiet.
Yeah, it will, but we'll see how it goes. I'm also curious to see how she reacts to everything, because my parents' first dog, when she got spayed, she absolutely hated my parents for that weekend. Just really irritated with them, didn't want anything to do with them. So I'm curious to see how Emmy is with it. If she's either going to crawl up her asses the entire time and want to be super lovey to us because she's been gone for a day by herself in a weird place and weird people, weird things happening kind of deal.
Yeah.
Or she's going to absolutely hate us for doing such a terrible, terrible thing to her.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll see what happens. But
yeah, it'll hopefully everything will go smoothly.
Other than that, any other Death Valley stories to share with the class?
One other thing I was thinking when I was going on the bike ride there is I was thinking I think one of the reasons why I've really been enjoying the cycling is that it's one of the very few things where you have to be extremely in the present. Just from the standpoint of, scanning the road ahead of you, looking for any sort of, issues or anything like that. So you have to be very much in the present, but at the same time, you kind of get into this zone where you also think about the past and you think about the future. So it's like one of those rare times when all three of those come together, where you're not just ruminating about something that happened in the past, or you're not just really looking forward to something in the future. It's just all those three things collide. And I think that's one of the fun things about doing the cycling. And there's not, I'm sure there's other things that also provide that, but there's just something about it in particular that was quite enjoyable. So that was another takeaway from that. And then another thing too, so since I've been doing the whole plant-based thing, the food that I had on this trip, since I'll usually bring along the backpacking food for, at least for the dinners, just to have a warm meal at the end of the day. And I found several that are completely plant-based. And typically the backpacking food is horrendous for you, like loaded with cholesterol, loaded with saturated fat, just loaded with like salt, and just horrible for you. Tasty, really tasty, but just like horrible. But there was two different brands that I got stuff from. One of them was Peak Refuel, which I've had for some of their other meals in the past. They had one. It was like I think it's kind of like an Indian inspired. It's like butternut something squash, whatever. But that was actually very, very tasty. It's the only vegan option that company has. But I did end up enjoying that. And then there's another company out of the UK called, I think it's called Firepot. There's like the yellow packages. And I had several of those as well. And those were also pretty good. But just from the standpoint that it was, even if I don't stick with the plant-based in the long run, which at this point I'm still going strong on it. I haven't wavered yet, but just knowing that simple choices like the backpacking food, there are options that are still tasty, but they're just not loaded with all that really horrible stuff that is in most of them. So maybe that's also one of the reasons why I had kind of a better feeling, a little bit more energy. And, in between just wandering all day long, still having the energy to go for the bike rides and everything else like that too. So that was another takeaway from the trip that was quite good.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said before, I'm continuously surprised that you actually stuck with this, despite your previous comments on not thinking that you would. So.
Yeah. And I forget now how long it's been. I mean, I'm sure if I looked back at the podcast, I could do the math, but I know it's been well over a month, maybe approaching 2 at some point. I don't know, but yeah, it's been interesting and lots of lessons learned, and so still going strong with
about a month and a half that you've been doing this.
Month and a half. There you go.
So
there you go.
Yeah. Let's see how long it can last. See what happens.
Yeah. But, so do we have a artist recommendation for this week?
We do. So one of the people that when I posted about this camera and got into a conversation with him, he is a UK photographer named Ben Lockett. And I know that you follow him. So should be able to pull him up pretty easily there. He's all black and white. Or if you scroll down, there's some color, but primarily working in black and white, primarily large format. I know that he just picked up the Hasselblad X1D2, I think is what it was, and been playing around with some adapted lenses on that and seeing how that fits into his workflow for everything, more as supplementation to large format than anything else.
I'm looking at the work right now, and I do indeed already follow him. Very moody black and white work, very expressive. And the color work, really cool as well. Really, really interesting stuff. In particular, I scrolled down to some of the color images, and I see some of the photos like with the cooling towers from nuclear power plants, and guy kind of standing there shirtless next to like a boat that's not in the water. Just some like really interesting stuff, a very interesting color palette for the color work, and then very, like I said, very moody and expressive for the black and white work.
Yeah, I love the tonality that he gets out of his black and white photos. And I know that he puts quite a lot of effort into that to get everything just right with it. I still love that first. So if you're looking at his Instagram profile, on the very top of the 3 pinned photos that he has, the one on the left with the guy in front of the excavating machine, or I forget what he called it, and then the right pinned photograph of the trailer in the fog. Those are 2 of probably my favorite pieces that he has. So those are cool. Really, really nice.
Yeah, and that first one looks like it's one of the tree ones that cuts down the trees and all that. Those are some pretty crazy pieces of equipment. But yeah, that's pretty crazy because it's got the foggy image, and then it's framing the man in the front of it. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
And the trailer, that with a bicycle leaning there against the fence, and then really beat up looking old trailer, and you start like, is this like is it not abandoned? Is that like someone's home? Is it so? There's a lot of story behind that. Yeah. And then the perspective of looking through the trees.
I think too, it's his most recent post that he has on here. as of now at least, is kind of looking out into the light in a cave or from a cave. And if you actually read what he said about it, he had no idea like what he was doing in terms of composition, in terms of metering, that kind of thing, because it was so dark in the cave. It was kind of, or focus, not metering, but in terms of composition and focus, he was pretty much guessing with it. And then it wasn't until after he scanned it in that he noticed on the cave walls there are engravings and such. So just really cool stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always find that fascinating. Things that you notice afterward when you look at a photo, the things that you don't notice in the moment, and it ends up looking very intentional afterwards, like as though like, of course you saw this, of course, that was the whole reason why you framed it, but those are always some interesting surprises. So yeah, that's a very good suggestion. I had to pull out my old phone to look at it because my current one is still downloading the Instagram app. But yeah, that's good. Very, very good suggestion. I could definitely see that sort of work being very, very well suited for a book, and just spending time flipping between the pages and taking in all of the images, and also perhaps pairing them to further enhance the experience. So that's a very good suggestion.
Yeah. So there we go. Ben Lockett. I will have a link in the show notes below to go check out his work and give him some support.
Perfect. All right, I think we're good. I hope you enjoyed our creative banter. You can learn more about Cody's work by visiting his website, codyschultz.com. And you can find my work at benhorn.com. For further discussion, join us at patreon.com/creativebanter. It's a place where we can interact with you, the listener. And although we greatly appreciate those who contribute by joining a tier, discussions are open to everyone, whether you're a paying member or not. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you around next time.